Hey everyone, this is Dr. Russ Jones.
And Brad Kennan here.
We are wide open. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I feel like a champion tonight. Done with patience.
Good.
Got my workout in.
Good. Where'd you go? The good gym, bad gym,
the good gym is my friend that takes me through these through these weight routines that make me crawl out of the gym and suffer and be a hot, sweaty mess. But I try to do him like 3 times a week. And then, I do my other thing at the, like Planet or something, or of course the hiking adds in there. So hoping to get out tomorrow. I was thinking about whether or not we'd had enough rain that the rattlesnakes and the copperheads would be out of the creeks yet.
Okay.
Because it's hot, so I had to keep shade. Kind of, somewhere there's some water around.
Right.
And the snakes are all down low right now because of that. So yeah, it's not like you're gonna see that many, but who really wants to see them?
Do you carry like a Fitbit or something with you the whole time or not?
No, I have.
So you know how many, or how do you just your Apple Watch or something like that? What do you do?
So I have 2 things that I use. I use the Onyx app on my cell phone, which costs $100 a year, but you can share it with, like 5 family members.
Right.
And it runs on GPS.
Why not? So I'm talking about for your fitness aspect.
So if I get lost, of course, I'm using the Apple Ultra Watch on my wrist, which
it'll point you.
It'll point me.
Right. So when you get done, do you look at your watch and say, I went 3 miles?
Yeah. On the Onyx app, there's a thing where I mark my walk, and it gives me the distance.
Okay.
And I do that kind of because, I'm always trying to cover all the areas in particular parks. And so when I get home, then I can put that walk on the map and then see, how much farther I need to go next time or whatever it happens to be.
Okay. So you transport that to another program, or do you use it on Onyx, or what do you do?
I have it on, I just opened up my iPad Pro, which is a lot larger, and I'm able to see it. But I mean, I never really have been able to do when people just go in and go walk around. Like, to me, I always want to be more methodical about it. I want to feel like I'm covering all the areas in a certain.
Gotcha. You never know what you might come upon.
Yeah, I mean, time of the year, when your calendar, you're marking all those type of things. Like now, I have a good idea this next month where they may be in certain areas in Ohio. In October, I have a good idea about a certain area in West Virginia. But when you say certain area, I mean, you're talking about, like a park. So what are the odds you're going to run into that?
Right, exactly. A lot of parks are 5,000-10,000 acres, so you got to get in, or ever how big they are, and you got to walk around. You got to hope that your paths, align with the stars, and you all cross, and you're there at the same time, which is that doesn't happen a whole lot. So,
yeah, I'd like to know like how many times I've been really close to them and just didn't know, like they're standing behind a tree up on a mountainside and they're just watching me go past, or, I've often wondered that.
Are you sure you want to know that?
Yeah.
No, you don't.
Yeah. I mean, I think as time goes on, so many of us are counting on some kind of sixth sense or intuition that maybe our forefathers had, like they were probably, their lives depended on it, feeling when an Indian might be around or something. And, people seem more open-minded to that.
You're telling me we've lost that because we can just whip into a burger shack and get a burger and we don't really have to think about it?
Yeah, I don't think our lives depend on it anymore.
Or they get that sixth sense of, there's a bathroom at the next exit as they travel across the United States. I know there's a bathroom at the next exit.
Exactly.
That's what their sixth sense is now.
What about like when you go in the woods and you're hunting? Have you ever noticed like it takes me like maybe a half hour or 45 minutes before I can slow down to like the pace of the woods? I get in there and it's hard for me to walk slow and take my time. And
it is because we're rushed all the time. You drive 65. Well, with you drive about 85 miles to the woods, 85 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Theoretically, you drive 85 miles an hour to the woods, and you get there and you're always going 100 miles an hour. And you got to see 100 patients every 6 minutes, blah, blah, blah. And you get to the woods, it's just tough to slow down.
Yeah. And I'm not even sure too, I have it in my mind that the Bigfoot stay back where they don't expect to see people during the day. It's kind of farther back in. It's on the side of some hill, some remote hollow,
right,
or holler, as we say here in West Virginia. But I can remember once each in the last 2 years where I was in a park where someone had a sighting at the same time I was in the park, and it was out near the road, and I was miles back in.
Maybe that's telling you something.
Yeah, I mean,
stay by the roads.
Well, I mean, that's where most of the sightings are, right? Because
exactly.
You have to have a witness.
Sure.
I mean,
exactly.
I mean, I don't know how you figure. The one was during the vernal pools.
Right,
I mean,
I remember that.
If the witnesses remember listeners, when creek floods, there's low-lying areas that fill up with water, and usually by summer they're kind of dry, but they hold water in the spring, and the salamanders and lizards and snakes and all the critters are in there. And
sure,
I've always speculated that was a awesome food source, and it was an overlooked Bigfoot related thing. So I've always tried to pick some of these vernal pools. Now, some are very remote, but some of the parks have great ones out in front. And I was basing the one I looked at on whichever had the closest avenue to a wilderness area, meaning, it can get away quickly from a deep area. And
Gotcha.
I parked there. I went in, I walked around. I spent, I don't know how many hours in there that day. And as soon as it got dark, boom, this guy has the sighting.
You should have stayed till it got dark.
I mean, that's the whole thing, right? I mean, almost all the Bigfoot activity, what is about 50-50 daylight to dark sightings, but almost everybody's out.
I honestly think that dusk and dawn are the two best times.
Okay.
That's what my belief.
I mean, it'd be hard to argue that because of most of the other animals are most active at that time, right?
Right. Exactly.
I mean, so I can see that.
Yeah. So, got a special guest on this evening.
Yeah. Who you got?
Me.
Well, we're doing our, what episode? 51. So we're next week's a year.
Yep. This is 51. Next week's a year. So, we're in the heart of the summer's almost over.
Mm-hmm.
People are busy. Everybody's going everywhere. So we decided to have us on this episode.
Yeah. Actually, I like some of the other podcasts. I like the question and answer episodes. And I know that we got a lot of people telling us that was one of their favorite episodes when you and I just talked about different topics. And so I'm going to try to schedule it about once every 4 or 6 weeks, depending upon, what kind of guests we have. But
right, exactly.
One thing I should do that I don't do is, for the people who are listening to this right now, just reach up there and hit the like button for us.
Yeah.
Sometimes we say that at the end, and sometimes we don't even say it at all. But
no,
I appreciate it if you just reach up there and hit the subscribe and tell some of your friends about it.
We're worried about ourselves just talking to each other. We don't care about anybody else. So
that's right. So what you got going on there with your China blind tonight?
I don't know. I think it's just a little.
No, I saw it moving. It's moving. It moved down a couple times when you were like,
"Oh,
there it goes."
I'm playing my laptop. I'm playing with the screen on it.
Okay.
My camera.
So the people remember, I spent all this money and I have this green screen, kind of like we did the projector screens in high school, and you pull it up and it's nice and everything. And Brad's got a 99-cent green screen from China that came all rolled up in pieces.
Right.
And it really has worked better than mine so far. But
right, exactly.
That's a whole different story.
That's a whole different story. So what are we going to start off with this evening?
Bones.
Bones. Let's talk about bones.
Okay.
So that is one of the number one questions that we get asked when we are out in public. If we're at a conference or anything like that, everybody always asks, where are the bones?
Yeah.
So we decided to do some calculating, put our engineering skills to work, and we did a little bit of math. So according to Google, how many acres of forestry are in the United States? Take a guess.
A lot.
Okay.
I mean, I know that we're not talking about wilderness areas because that's significantly less, but
Correct.
I mean, most of the country is wooded. I don't remember. It's like what 70% or something like that.
I have no idea.
I think it's.
I just know what Mr. Google tells me.
I think that it's around 70 something percent, maybe 73 or 71% of the U.S. is still wooded. I mean, everybody thinks it's cities, but it's really not cities and it's really not fields. But do you know that there's more woods now than there was during World War One?
Yep.
People always think too, you know, we're developing, it's getting lighter, things are spreading.
Yeah.
But really there's more woods now.
So
I mean, where you are, go ahead.
There's 2.43 billion acres in the United States. That's a lot. Total.
Yeah.
So I think your number of 73% is a little off.
Okay.
Maybe we'll call it rural, non-citywide, because that could be, because you know you got the plains or something like that you can drive for 8 hours across Kansas, and there's not a lot of forest, but there's a lot of nobody else.
It's 34%.
Okay, 34%. Okay.
Yeah. But you think about Ohio, at one point, it had no forest or very little, maybe the steep hollows, you know what I mean, in certain parts of the state, but largely all the trees were cut down and it was agricultural. So, you know, at one point we probably had hardly any Bigfoot in a place like Ohio, and now it's the fourth most common place for sightings.
Right. So
the habitat's by far better.
So what changed? You know, when it went from agricultural to forest, did people just move into the cities? You know, everybody was in the country, they moved to the cities because jobs were in the cities and things like that. So they just let the farmland go and just said, hey, it's gonna grow forest.
Well, the Industrial Revolution happened,
obviously,
and so people started working more in factories.
Yep.
And less people started farming. You know, we didn't have the family farm to provide substance for all of us. And so it improved a lot.
So let's think about this. From, let's say, 0 AD to 1700s.
Okay.
Right? You had horse and buggy. You had ships with sails. Then you kind of move forward. Horses stay around. I think cars were kind of more mainstream, 1906 or something like that. Henry Ford and the Model A, I think, was around 1906. I do believe, I'm not sure.
Okay.
So for 1900 years, we did not make a lot of technological advancements.
Yes.
I mean, really, we didn't. You know, the Gutenberg press back in the day, and you start printing Bibles, and then they start printing newspapers, and then so you started transferring information. So now it is 2023, so 123 years. India just put a rover on the moon. They say they did. I saw the video. It looked like a Space Invader movie. I didn't believe it, but they said they did. And there was some video from the rover, so they say they're on the moon. So in 123 years, we went from buggy whips, horse and buggy, not a lot of technology, to the moon, to the Mars. What happened in that 123 years? Why did that not occur? Why did we not do anything for the first 1900 years?
So what changed? What was it?
What I don't know. I'm asking. Brain capacity? Was it moving from hunter-gatherer to agricultural? So we know that people, if you look at skeletons and stuff from a long time ago, they never had teeth problems. They never had to have wisdom teeth out. They never had to do anything. You know, our jaws, our faces are shrinking because of what we eat. Because of what we eat is easy. It's not hard. It's easy to eat. It's a burger. It's fries. It's processed foods. It's cooked foods. It's bakery stuff from the 1900s. So, you know, as that moves forward, is our brain increasing inside? Are we becoming more intelligent? Because I can argue that, because I've seen what's happened in the last, 50 years. You know, a manual from 1956 for a Corvette tells you how to adjust the valve timing and check, with a feeler gauge, pulling the valve covers off and checking that. Today, it's got to tell you don't drink the battery acid, right?
Yeah.
Lawyers. Right. So lawyers. So, but people are getting stupider. So,
well, I mean, I remember that I want to say in the last 20 years that the average IQ has dropped like 11 points.
That's a lot.
But no one's, it's a lot quickly, but no one's talking about it. You know what I mean? Because I don't know whether it would be politically incorrect to talk about it, because then people would talk about, what would be the reasons. Then maybe it might be somebody's fault that somebody would blame. But I mean, when the IQ is dropping, I mean, it's dropping, right? I mean, clearly something's going on.
Absolutely. So, you look, I fear for my grandkids, because you look at the decline of just, a natural thing in men, just testosterone.
Yeah.
It's going down.
Yes.
Every generation. So what's causing that? Is it processed food? Is it because they're not out in the woods? Is it because they're, life is easy and it's not required as much, there's nothing wrong with being masculine at all.
But the problem is that all those numbers, whether you're talking about thyroid or testosterone or human growth hormone or whatever it is,
right?
To get the average, we're taking the average. So they're taking the average male and saying this is average, but that average male has decreased by 20% over the last 50 years or whatever in testosterone. Yeah. So now the average is significantly lower than what it was.
Yep. So I don't know what's causing it. I mean, we all have our ideas and thoughts, but that's nor here nor there. Yeah. So now we're back on bones. I don't know. I don't know how we got off that.
All right.
So in the United States, you guessed that there was a lot of forest.
Yeah.
According to Mr. Google, there's 304 million acres of forest. So we're going to assume that Bigfoot live in forests, right? They're not,
correct.
There's not a lot of reports in the plains, in Kansas, in Nebraska. If there are reports, I would assume they're going to be eastern Nebraska, eastern Kansas, around.
Yeah. Maybe
Kansas
more transient in those areas. Coming through, not staying all the time.
Correct. I mean, I've been to Kansas. I've done work in Kansas. I've done work in Texas, Oklahoma, all throughout there. There ain't nothing out there. You come out of the Rocky Mountains, you hit the eastern side of Wyoming, and then next thing you know, you're in Nebraska and you're driving.
Yeah.
And eventually you may hit Iowa. I'm not even sure. It doesn't matter. It all looks the same.
Yeah.
So 304 million acres. Okay. So we believe that there are between 2 and 10,000 Bigfoot
in the United States.
In the United States.
Canada.
Not including Canada, Mexico, obviously Hawaii, because there are none in Hawaii.
Yeah.
So let's pick a number. Let's say 5,000. Right.
Okay.
So we have 5,000 Bigfoot in the United States.
Which is enough for a breeding population, is enough that there would be, no problem with carrying capacity. There would be enough that you would have the sighting numbers, because, in modern day times, we have 100,000 modern day reports of Bigfoot.
Sure.
And of course, we think 1 out of every 20 is reported.
Right.
So, significant number there.
Sure. That's a lot.
Yeah.
So is it one of your books? I do believe you compare, these things to the great apes. So great apes going to last about, live to about 50 years old.
Yeah, that's right. That's on average. That's about what the great apes live to.
Right. So on average, you're going to have about 5% of the population of Bigfoot dying every single year.
Yes.
Okay. So we agree on that.
Yeah.
So that number, by doing math wizardry, is about 250 Bigfoot die every year. Okay.
Because you're trying to find one, and if it's not getting hit on the road or it's not getting shot at by a hunter,
well, if it gets hit on the road, the sheriff is going to cover that up and call government, and they're going to come in and swoop in and take that away. So we're not going to even we're not worried about that.
Okay. Do you legitimately think that would happen?
Yes.
Okay.
I do. So
I'm not sure about that.
Okay. All right. So 250 dying per year. There's 304 million acres. That is 1.216 million acres per dead Bigfoot.
Yeah.
So that each to let's change that reference. So let's say every 1,900 square miles, there's one dead Bigfoot of forest.
So if you're looking at a state like Ohio, you're talking about there being 5. If there's 100 Bigfoot, there's about 5 that die a year.
Yep.
The Wayne National Forest, which is around 1 million acres, I think, more or less. It's divided into 3 sections in Ohio. So you would have in all those 3 sections, you would have a Bigfoot.
Right.
In West Virginia, you have the Monongahela National Forest, which is around 1 million acres, and all that steep, uncharted, untrailed, unroaded many places for miles. You have one dead Bigfoot.
Correct. And, I always like to reference Chimp Empire because it was a pretty good show. I really liked it. They had some Bigfoot on there that were aging. I do believe one was kind of aging out, and it got injured, and it thought it was going to die. So it did not stay with the troop. It left. It went off by itself, found somewhere that it could be at, and that's where it stayed until it passed away. So my point being is these things, there's thoughts out there that they may bury. Bigfoot may bury their dead.
Because some of the great apes do.
Some of the great apes do.
Yeah.
But these things, they're not going to die on the side of the road if they die of natural causes. My point being, they're going to go off by themselves in a cave up under somewhere that away from everything to pass.
It's kind of like an old dog, right? Because you know what I mean? Like how a dog going to die, just kind of wanders off the farm or whatever it happens to be, and goes back and gets in the back of some briar patch that is inaccessible or some rock crevice or something.
Yep. We had a dog did the same thing years and years and years ago. She would leave, go outside, greatest dog ever, and she would just got away from the family, and we eventually we took her to the vet and had to put her down, just get her, but she didn't want to be around the family. She wanted to be off by herself somewhere. So I believe these things, if they're going off in the middle of nowhere, they know where the middle of nowhere is.
Yeah.
And that's where they're going.
We've also taken reports where they're in a small area.
Yeah.
So, it's been speculated that if they are staying in an area that's much too small, then, the suspicion would be, I always thought it was probably there was an older one with them.
Sure.
Some people said that sometimes maybe, a baby was born or something, but I think kind of that's happened for generations, and, it's not like a baby's hard to carry or whatever. So, what I mean, but maybe something like that. I don't know. I mean, it's probably a reasonable, reason why one might stay. You remember there's that place in Ohio that was like 1,200 acres. I don't even think it was that, but it was surrounded by cornfields, and there was like 5 farmers that surrounded the property had all seen, a Bigfoot or a different Bigfoot. There was a no roadkill at all. There was no deer there. They've been staying in this one small section when they could have went like 7 miles and been in some of the most secluded sections of Ohio, but for whatever reason, they stuck in that one place for a period of time.
Yeah, maybe they were taking care of an elder individual.
Yeah, you remember we heard that one report in Kentucky, I think it was, where remember that guy fell into like a cave or something or a rock overhang, and then there was an older Bigfoot in there, and he scared it. You remember that?
That was Ronnie Powell. Remember,
okay,
that was her report in Alabama.
Okay.
when the guy, when it was like it wasn't a cave, it was a dammed up area type den thing, and he went into it, and there was an older Bigfoot in there, and it screamed and scrambled out, and that's when the big Bigfoot came. Remember that? The Squatch chased him back to the house.
Did it have something like its eyes were milky or something, like it was, maybe had glaucoma or
had cataracts, had age spots, like kidney spots. It's white hair. I think if you look on Sibylla's website, she actually has a drawing of that she did.
Yeah. So I guess what you and I are saying, I know you're looking for that right now, but is that we think that they probably, the odds of one being, when you're talking about 19 or almost 1 million acres, let's just call it 1 million acres. So there's one dead Bigfoot a year on 1 million acres of wilderness. Mm-hmm. Guys are out there trying to find it. So if let's say it's lucky enough that maybe the buzzards are out and you're out somewhere and you see buzzards, you might be going in. Most of the time it's going to be a deer because, like say pick Ohio, there's around 650,000 deer, but there's only 100 Bigfoot. So, whatever percent of the time, almost 100% of the time completely, it's going to be some other animal and not a Bigfoot. There's a chance that they could bury them if they're around. But I mean, the way everybody's talking about it is it has more of a social structure, similar maybe to an orang. Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's what she was discussing.
I think you're right.
So
Brad's posted a picture of the older Bigfoot that was seen, the story that we were just telling. It was missing teeth and
so I think that I don't know.
I think that was the male that followed him out whenever
that's scared. That's the male.
Okay, that scared because whenever he had scared that female, that whooped and ran off, and then a male came and followed the man out of the woods. With very intimidating behavior. So anyway, so we got this huge 1 million acre thing. You're trying to find one dead Bigfoot in it, of which, if they do the orang model, it means that you would have the family group, meaning the female and maybe a young one or two that's staying roughly in, a certain, maybe 30, 40 square mile area or something like that. Then that's kind of their home range. And then the male would be ranging wider than that, maybe in between family groups or something like that. So if you had a male die, then, the odds are that he would be alone. So then he wouldn't be buried by something. So then I guess that would be the one that would be, your only chance of finding it, which, I mean, when you put it out there and say 1 million acres per dead Bigfoot, I mean, you're talking about
1 million acres of forest.
Yeah. Because keep in mind that there's not people looking for, they're not looking for bones, and they're not going out there looking for a dead Bigfoot. I mean, we have people going out there trying to find tracks or, Bigfoot evidence, but we don't have people we haven't trained any of our dogs. Shade's laying here asleep beside me, but I mean, they have people training their dogs for antlers now. I mean, we could train dogs for bones and then just turn them loose and hopefully you get lucky. If you couldn't identify a bone, then just throw it in a bag and take it back.
Yeah, besides the raccoons and the possums and the deer and all that kind of stuff that's out there.
Yeah, you remember I did an hour-long presentation one time at a large conference on just where are the bones, and it was a whole hour. And one screen was all the different things that eat the bones. And really, the only thing that after a period of just a few weeks that's not scattered about would be some vertebra in the skull. Those are harder bones, and so those could last in time. But when the leaves fall and stuff, of course, it's not easy to see those things.
Well, I mean, even you had I do believe you had a deer or a trail cam picture of a deer eating a rib bone.
Yeah, deer eat bone. They'll do almost anything in some places to get minerals.
Correct.
I find them a lot of times. I was interested in rock overhangs in Ohio. I found this place. And I was like, gosh, this is sketchy for a deer to get in here because there was one way in and one way out, and if there was a predator there waiting on the deer to come out from there, it was going under this rock that was like 8 feet tall, and it was just full of deer tracks, I guess, where they were just in there licking to get minerals or whatever, but no good way to escape.
Wow. Okay. All right. So that's where the bones are at. They are out there. We're just not looking in the right places.
And we don't have people looking for bones or looking for other things.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, I'm not sure how, maybe a dog trained to go after bones, but how else? I mean, and then you could look for vultures whenever you saw those. But if you remember, I told that story about in Ohio, has the largest Bigfoot conference in the world. And there was all those buzzards circling, and it was like, quarter mile, not even, it was hundreds of yards from the lodge, and you had 5,000 people there over the weekend. But as far as I saw, nobody walked down there just to see what was dead.
Right. Exactly.
And of course, you have all those dumpsters. That Bigfoot are notorious for dumpster diving. So I mean, it could have been right there when all the big names in Bigfoot were there, and there was a dead one there.
Yeah, absolutely.
What else would you do if you're going to go hunt just for the bones? I mean, a dog, the buzzards. What else is there?
I have no idea. That's about it. I mean, A, it's going to take a specially trained dog. B, where are you going to look at? Do you need to look at somewhere the bones are going to wash to? Do you have to look at somewhere where bones are going to where this thing's going to die?
Yeah.
And go to?
I'd be curious on the great apes, whether there's a time of the year that more die. I mean, the problem with, of course, the other great apes aren't in cold,
right?
Not so cold of climate, but because you would think right offhand that most of the animals in North America that would die during cold weather.
Yeah.
So is it reasonable to assume that Bigfoot would be more common to die during cold weather? And so if you were going to look on a specific slope, that you would always be on the south facing slope, because that's where a mammal would be, because it would be a little warmer, or on that,
in a cave and an overhang, something like that.
So a north facing or south facing hillside, I'm sorry,
yep,
would be the side that you'd want to look on. So if you had your dog trained for bones, you would walk on the south facing hillsides.
Yeah.
In those overhangs in your 1,000,000-acre park that you're looking for.
Right.
Yeah.
Plot that one out.
I see a lot of those piles of bones. You ever see those through Appalachia, where the farmers would throw the big piles of rocks when they were collecting them? I mean, these guys were workers, and they were a lot smaller people than us. And I don't know, probably several times a year, people will send me pictures of those rock piles, thinking that, possibly, there was a Bigfoot buried underneath them. But in Appalachia, almost always it was just where a field was cleared, or even a slope or a hillside,
right,
or mountainside.
Even guys have machinery now that just clear those rocks, and you just take them over and dump them, and make a rock pile.
Yeah.
So, just so happens it's the width of a bucket. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you said that you have a story that you would like to share with us.
Yes. I'd read this today. It's interesting. Historically, I had talked about, there were some politicians, famous ones now, that supposedly have had Bigfoot sightings.
Yep.
And I know that we had Charlie Raymond on one of the episodes, and we were talking to Charlie about that. And he had a story. He thought that it was true.
Yeah, he said Mitch McConnell, I do believe, had seen one, or was Rand Paul, one of the two. I thought both of the Kentucky senators or whatever had seen it. I think that, didn't Charlie, somebody asked Mitch,
Lauren Coleman on a flight, I think, was with Mitch McConnell.
Was it Mitch McConnell or Paul? One of the two asked him, and I think he just said he couldn't make comment or something about it.
So he didn't want to talk about it.
Right. So instead of saying no, he said, I don't want to talk about it. Means I do want to talk about it, but I can't talk about it because it'll make me sound crazy. So I'm going to say I'm not going to talk about it. But really, it's what I'm saying is I saw Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Right. He could have just said no.
Yeah. But I mean, it's rare in Appalachia. I promise you, in any family in Appalachia, there is someone has a story about something like that. A Bigfoot type encounter, being followed in the woods, or something screaming at them, or whatever it happens to be. But you think about in those times when there was a lot more than 30% of the forest or the country being forested. I mean, we had our mountain men, Simon Kenton, Davy Crockett, Daniel Boone, scores and scores of them around, that you would think that they would have, ran into a Bigfoot occasionally, but it was even more odds of it happening, even, I guess, even less then, maybe because of that, although they were in the woods all the time.
I was going to say, I listened to, I'm an audiobook guy. I listened to a pretty big book on Daniel Boone at one point. They never brought up the Bigfoot, but basically this man, and back then, they spent all of their time in the woods.
Yeah.
If the saying was with Daniel Boone was, if the neighbors got too close within like 5 miles, he would move.
That's why he moved out of West Virginia. When you come into Charleston, people are familiar with it on the riverfront. You can see a cliff there, and that's where Daniel Boone's first fort was on top of that. But he moved to Kentucky because he thought that it was getting too crowded in West Virginia, which is kind of ironic.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this guy, he would go out for months and months and months, and him and his boy or him and somebody else, and, they would go hunting. They would go to a new area and they would go hunting. And, that was, that's where the term a buck came from. A buck, they shot a deer and they would skin it and they would get $1 for that deer skin. They preferred to eat bear meat because it tastes better. They didn't really eat deer meat back in the day. They just used them for their hides. But we're talking people that spent their entire lives in the wood all the time.
Yeah.
Months and months and months. And, it would not be uncommon for him to leave for a year and come back to his family a year later.
Well, you remember he left at one point for 3 years, and his wife married his son or his brother. So when he came back, and then actually he had another child. It was actually from his brother, but his brother just moved out and they just went back to the way it was. Yeah, they just carried on.
I guess isn't that how, like, if you go to prison or something, your wife gets to do that? Or I don't know how that goes.
I don't know how it works.
I don't know what the prison rules are. Anyway, so Daniel Boone spent all his time in the woods, and he was a great hunter. He's a great shot.
Yeah.
And supposedly did he kill a Bigfoot? Is that how it goes?
He did kill a book. When Bigfoot, when you're saying, of course, there's been a lot of autobiographies, and somewhere over my shelf here, which has, a couple hundred Bigfoot books, there is an autobiography of Daniel Boone, not an autobiography, but a biography.
Sure.
And it tells the story of when his deathbed, they asked if he had any
regrets or something.
Regrets. And he said that he had killed a Yahoo or a Yahoo, however you want to pronounce it. But, I remember I speculated in one of the books that Gulliver's Travels was the most common novel among settlers, early pioneers, and they all had that book and they passed it around. It wasn't a lot of books then.
Sure.
And in it, there was a large ape-like creature that was called a Yahoo. Or a Yahoo. And so many people believe that's why in Appalachia, they will call Bigfoot Yahoos. And, and of course, in Kentucky, we have Yahoo Falls or Yahoo Springs, and all that area in the Daniel Boone National Forest over there. But I saw this, and it talked about that experience. I'll just read it. It says, Daniel Boone was with 5 other men hunting near the Red River in Kentucky. They had just came back to the camp after hunting all day. Daniel and the other men were engaged in cooking a meal and preparing the hides that had taken that day when they heard a loud scream and rustling in the brush nearby. It was a sound that none of them have ever heard before, but being tired from the day's hunt, they retired for the evening, hearing no other sound throughout the night. The following morning, they all left camp, each going a different direction for the day's hunt. Daniel had a good morning of hunting, killing 3 deer. On his return back to the camp, he was delayed by the steep terrain and the weight of the meat he was carrying. As twilight neared, he heard something moving in the woods in front of his path. He couldn't see what it was at first. He thought it was an Indian. Whatever it was, it had no fear of making noise. He began to hear a low grunting noise, and it was circling him at a rapid pace. Daniel continued his journey, trying to reach camp before darkness fell. As he reached a small creek named Lulbygrud, a large creature blocked his path. It appeared to be almost 7 feet tall. Its yellow eyes glowed in the twilight, and its entire body was covered with long fur. The smell of the creature emitted was horrid, and as he stepped closer, the beast let loose a ferocious howl and advanced toward him. Daniel raised his rifle and fired, striking it in the middle of its chest. It fell to the ground and let out a final, almost human scream. As Daniel approached the beast, he could tell it had expired, and on close examination, the creature had a human-like face, was about 6 foot 10 inches tall, Daniel decided to leave the creature where it fell and continue back to camp in case other creatures were nearby. It was his intent to return with the other hunting companions the next morning and retrieve the body to display it at the settlement. Daniel Boone loved to tell a good story or tall tale as much as anyone. He was a prolific reader, and one of his favorite books was Gulliver Travels by Lemur Gulliver, first surgeon, then captain of several ships. And part of that fictional land in that book, it talks about the creature that's similar to that.
Okay.
Yahoo, Yeahoh, is the name given by the Shawnee native people to describe a large, native, hairy, human-like beast that roams the hill of now Kentucky.
Okay.
That's it.
So my question is this. Why did he not go back? He was supposed to go back the next day and he didn't, correct?
Yeah.
So obviously he didn't go back.
Mm-mm.
So why did he not go back? I guess that's my question.
I guess it seems unreasonable in your deathbed. And of course, like I said, it's in a biography that, it was reported that he said that he regretted killing that man-like beast, the Yahoo.
Sure.
I mean, I'm inclined to believe it.
Okay. All right. I mean, really, all he had to do was go back and collect the body. Cut off. I
don't think that
hand or something.
They're so much more practical than us. I mean, they're just trying to eat. They're trying to do this. They're trying to survive. They got Indians around them.
That's true. I mean, there was a lot. He got run out a lot by Indians. He had a lot of Indian fights. He was a great Indian fighter. I mean, period. He was. So
think about this.
He got captured by the Indians, didn't he? One time
he did. I mean, remember they adopted him. He had a Shawnee wife.
Yeah.
He lived in Ohio with the Shawnee for a period of time.
Yep.
I mean, but how it worked historically was, in order for a new creature to be named and identified and exoted, you had master naturalists that killed them all. They harvested them. They kind of stuffed them. They took them back to DC or whatever. But it was like about 50 or 75 years after Daniel Boone, when you had like the big tours going out west and the tours through the area where they were actually, prior to that, you're just trying to survive and you're in this land. They're probably, they're trapping, they're trying to make money, trying to get by, trying to survive. The Indians are chasing them everywhere.
Oh yeah.
So, I think that was probably the very least of the concerns.
I wonder if possibly he thought it was a different tribe of Indians of some sort, and he really didn't want to mess with it.
So you remember in Appalachia, or at least this part of Appalachia, there was 5 tribes. 3 of the tribes had names for Bigfoot.
Right.
And so I'm sure that.
So are you saying the other 2 tribes were Bigfoot? They didn't have a name for Bigfoot.
They just didn't have a name that people recognized for Bigfoot. That first book, the Tracking the Stone Man, that was one of the names. I think that was from the Iroquois Indians, but no one's sure whether one was Stone Giant or Stonish Giant. So, you don't know whether it's because Bigfoot was up on top of the hills or whether it was camouflaged well, or whether it's because, it's kind of known that it throws rocks at people. You're just not sure whether or not that's what the deal is.
Okay. All right. Well, that was a fairly interesting take.
Yeah.
I mean, coming from a guy that literally has spent his entire life in the woods. I mean, he lived to be fairly old, and he's seen a lot of things, and I know he liked to tell stories. But if you're on your deathbed, there's a lot of things you can talk about, and that's probably not on the top of my list, unless it did happen.
Yeah, he lived kind of a sad existence. I mean, he was a wild man of the woods and explored that and claimed all these, millions of acres of woods, only to have them stolen later by attorneys and different people. And in the end, he lived in some little tiny cabin on some back street in some town in Kentucky. And,
Yeah. I mean, he was even given, acreage. He was given land by, I think, the people down in Kentucky. He was given a bunch of land and stuff like that. I mean, he hunted buffalo at, there was a salt lick down there, and the Indians and all that stuff. So he was a very interesting individual.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're moving on.
Okay.
What's our next topic?
How about if you we talk one of the things that you want to talk about, and then I'll talk about a couple of books.
Okay.
It looks like we're kind of winding down there.
Yeah, something that has kind of been bothering me. I mean, I am a conservative individual, very conservative. But there are a couple things that really do bother me.
Just two.
Two
dozen.
That's right. That's what I'm going to talk about today.
Oh, okay.
One is that green energy and the cost to our wildlife or the impact it is having on our wildlife. And I'm talking, it's starting to pop up a lot. The documentary just came out on it. I haven't watched it yet, but I'd like to. Off the East Coast, they're putting all these wind turbines up out in the ocean, and they're literally pounding these things into the sea floor to hold these wind turbines.
Is this like pilings or something?
They're driving pilings into the sea floor. So between 2016 and 2023, there's been over 200 humpback whale deaths off the eastern coast of the United States in a certain area where they're building a lot of wind turbines.
200?
200.
That seems like a crazy number.
That's a lot.
Why am I not hearing this more if it's that big of number?
Because the media is controlled by the liberals and green energy, and taking that transfer of wealth from the wealthy to other people and making it a socialist country is much more important. And in order to do that, they have to control us. That means wind, solar, get away from coal-fired power plants or natural gas-fired power plants. But for them to kill 200 whales, and the thing about it is, I do believe they came out and said, "Oh no, we did a study. It's not affecting the whales." Well, guess what? You asked for the study. The study doesn't exist. Nobody did the study. They just said that. The government said that. They're covering all this up, and it's just really bothers me. And the other thing is, the birds, predatory birds, the raptor class, the eagles, the bald eagles, if I was to shoot a bald eagle, I'd get 10 years in prison and $100,000 fine. You put up a wind turbine and it cuts an eagle in half, and it's literally no big deal. So they're saying that between a very light estimate is about 140,000 to 330,000 birds a year killed by wind turbines.
I know I had heard previously that there was more birds killed by the turbines than animals, whatever it happens to be, by, our right of ways, our oil lines and things like that.
Absolutely. But here's what they do. So what they do is they say, okay, we're going to do a study. So we're going to go map out this area underneath this wind turbine. That's it. If it doesn't fall underneath that wind turbine in that area that they map out, right underneath the turbine, they do not count it. So there are some estimates that believe that number that I just gave you is a tenth of what's actually killed by the turbines.
I mean, I think the thing that concerns me the most about that is, certain subjects, like for instance, when it comes to health, that health should be off limits to politics. It should just be the science.
Yeah.
It's for the citizens. What's good or bad or healthy or unhealthy. All the doctors, the scientists should be apolitical when we're doing this, set aside, not doing the studies for drug companies, not doing the studies for whoever. It should be completely set aside. And it seems like, to me, it should be the same way when we're considering damage to it. So they'll show pictures of a dead antelope or a dead elk or something on an oil line because there was a drip or something coming through Alaska. But how do we not talk and be fair and equal and unbiased when we're talking about the damage done to those turbines or done by the turbines?
Because it doesn't fit their agenda. just doesn't fit their agenda. Evil oil's bad. So what happens is, let's get rid of oil. So let's reduce oil. So let's push the electric car, which that is a whole nother disaster. We see that in cold weather. Go look at a cobalt mine, those mines, the lithium mines, all that's controlled out of Afghanistan. A lot of the Chinese own about 90% of that now. Everywhere I look, we're doing work over in Indiana. We're doing work in Ohio. Several places they're building these monstrous electric battery plants that they're never. I mean, I don't see it. I'm sorry, I don't. I see hybrid as being a good possibility. Let's do batteries and engines so we can fill a car up full of gas, and let's get 700 miles or 1,000 miles out of it by using electric and gas. An electric car, I think they're really cool for a lot of things, maybe work in town. But the other thing that you don't think about is they can turn it off. The government can turn that car off. They don't like you. They don't like your social credit score. They don't want you going out of your 15-minute city, your smart city, whatever that is. They turn you off when you get to the border. So you get to city limits, your car turns off. And if you don't think that's going to happen, I think people are kidding themselves. I really, really do.
Brad, I think that we need to have, like, periodically, we need to have like Brad's rant, where we just let you choose a subject and rant about it for like 5 minutes or something.
Sure. I think this, any way that they can control us, and if you think that they're doing this, anything out of the goodness of their heart, you're absolutely kidding yourself. Absolutely.
I just think that I wish that as a country, we could all come together and just concentrate on the things that we can agree on. And I know that's naive, but heaven knows I'm naive. Right? All my friends make fun of me saying I'm naive, but
right.
There's certain things that, once again, I think that are off limits. Anything relating to health is off limits from politics. Anything relating to what may harm the animals or our environment should be off limits. We should be able to have a free, honest conversation about that.
Absolutely. And the thing, nuclear power, put up a freaking nuclear power plant. The cleanest energy there is in the entire world is a nuclear power plant, by far. You put up a solar farm, you get a hailstorm, guess what? That solar farm does not work anymore. Now you have to recycle all those solar panels, destroy them, build new ones, put it up, you're down. Nuclear power plant. There's been, one instance of a nuclear power plant failure in the United States, 3 Mile Island. You do have Chernobyl, which that was just a comedy of errors over there that caused that whole issue. You have Fukushima in Japan. I don't know the history behind that either. Was that an earthquake or something that caused that one? Or
I don't recall now. I just know that's the one that's making the fish kind of radioactive. You can't eat.
Right.
That's a whole health episode now.
Right. So you look at other countries like France. I think France, most of 90% of all their power comes from nuclear power plants. So, people look at these things, they say, oh, look at all that stuff coming out of that stack. Well, guess what? That's water vapor. All you're doing is chilling water. You're heating up water with nuclear, with the rods. They heat up water. That water goes through a heat exchanger, which heats other water. That water runs through a turbine. There you go. And it spins a turbine. And you cool it down and you do it again. It's not that hard.
And there we go. That's Brad's rant for the day.
Right.
For the week.
Absolutely. So whatever.
So I know we just got a couple of minutes here. I know my friend Ontario Richardson out of Iowa had suggested, she said, why don't you pick out a couple of your books, because of the 7 million Bigfoot books that you have over there on your shelves and to recommend for people. So first one I'm going to recommend, Bigfoot, Sasquatch Evidence by Grover Krantz, the first academic to be involved in Bigfoot.
Okay.
I try to read it about once a year, but to be honest with you, it's probably been a couple of years, but I know I've read it many, many times. You remember when Matt Pruitt was on, he was talking about Grover was the first one to talk about it was more to pay more attention to female Bigfoot sightings because they tend to stay in a smaller area. Remember that?
Yep. What? Give us the 30-second synopsis of what the book is.
Well, it's I don't remember what year. Let me look real quick what year Grover wrote this book. 1999.
Okay.
So, you know what I mean? Like 24 years ago, he
That's
wrote
not
this
that
the first.
that's not that long ago.
No, not when you're talking about Bigfoot stuff.
Right.
And I don't know if this is a second edition because I know he does have a second edition of it. But I mean, he was the first one to try to put a scientific thing on it, speculating that Bigfoot was Gigantopithecus. He was the first one to make that claim in a book like this. He was the first scientist. Largely, of course, Grover, you know, he passed away. He donated his body to Smithsonian and his Irish wolfhounds. And so he's there as a skeleton and his wolfhound playing with him. But he never got to see, you know, his Bigfoot dream come to fruition. He thought that we needed to kill one. He was the first person who came and said that, and he carried a gun with him. And of course, he always said that you needed to not worry so much about the first one, but it was the second one, the one that was with it, that you know, that's where that all came from.
I agree with that 1,000%.
And he was one of the first horsemen. Second book, Sasquatch, The Apes Among Us, John Green, British Columbia, newspaper reporter, started collecting reports. It's funny, one of the things that everybody talks about with John Green, I mean, he wrote well, his database is still being used. I don't remember the number of reports, maybe over 1,000, but he wasn't quick to get to the places when there was something happening, and many times left. And I don't remember, there was one researcher that we might have had on, or that I listened to someplace, that was saying that there was literally a Bigfoot screaming, and he did an interview and then left while it was still screaming, rather than
just hanging
around.
Doing it.
Yeah, but you know, it's funny because the four horsemen, they were just dudes. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
They didn't really know what was going on then.
Right. So I'm going to throw out there, you did those two.
Yeah.
There was a show that I ran across on Prime. I don't know if you saw it or not. The Unwanted Big Sasquatch. Unwonted Sasquatch, 2016.
And it was where on Prime?
It's on Prime.
Okay.
Several years ago, we saw Meldrum do a talk about Patty. The Patterson Gimlin film, basically starting at the top of her sagittal crest and going down, why the ears were a certain way, why the neck moved a certain way, why she turned a certain way, why her jaw was a certain way, everything. And it was one of the greatest speeches I ever saw. It was an hour and a half long. I'm sure it's in the archives of the Ohio Bigfoot Conference somewhere. I don't know where that's at. I've tried to access it, get it, find it, but it's just to no avail. So in this video, or in this movie, or this documentary, whatever it is, Meldrum covers a lot of that very quickly, but it's very, very good. And it's got John Green in it, from where John Green was a reporter back in the day, back in the 60s when he was younger, 50s and 60s. It's got a lot of old stories. As far as documentary goes, I recommend it. It was very good.
I remember you tell me, I mean, you heard a lot of speakers over the years, and you always talk about that one that Meldrum did with the anatomy and how compelling it was, and that if the skeptics could just listen to that one.
Yep. Absolutely. If they could just see that one, you would believe in Bigfoot forever.
Oh my,
because Meldrum is the guy. So,
yeah, I know it. I don't remember, it was last year that I was sitting with him at breakfast, but I mean, it was one of the things that pushed me into trying to make sure that my health was better, because I look at all of us that are in this generation, we're all aging, we're developing some health issues. I always wonder, how much longer am I going to be running the hills instead of using one of Doug Hychek's electric bikes to scoot along?
Right.
So, it's winding down, man. I feel that presence, that urgency, that pressure of time.
Well, I think we're all feeling that.
Yeah. Well, it was fun. I mean, we covered some subjects, and we have a lot more on our list that we did not get to. Yep. So maybe for another day. I know we had somebody say, well, how come you guys didn't reach out and let us ask you some questions? So maybe the next time we'll have to do that for the listeners, instead of us rambling on about some subject or whatever. Although I think it would be fun to cover the game camera thing too.
Yep. I think coming up too, we're going to aren't we supposed to have like a live podcast sometime? We're going to get some people on. I don't know if that'll do any good or not, but
that's in October. And I mean, not far now, because it's like 6 weeks from now. We are in Cleveland area with Matt Moneymaker.
Yep.
and we're going to do a show from there. I don't know if that one will be live or when we'll do it, but I don't know.
We'll let you know.
But we have something going on there. But once again, like, subscribe. We appreciate you.
Yep.
The BigfootDoc.com.
Wide Open Research on Instagram. All that kind of stuff.
Yeah. All right, my friends. Good to see you.
All right, we're out.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep.